Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're joined by physiotherapist Andy Walling. So thank you for joining me early, Andy. I appreciate you doing that.
Thanks for the invite. Yeah, nice early start. Always good.
No problem, no problem. Cool. So we've known each other for a long time, but again, I'm intrigued to know more about you. So I know you're from my neck of the woods, so you're from like the Manchester area. So whereabouts are you from? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, I've got a really important distinction on this Manchester area thing now because I'm from Salford.
Yeah,
so
well, I
yeah,
didn't know that, but I saw that. I know that you're a Salford Reds man.
I am big Salford Reds fan. Yeah, absolutely. Cut me in half. I've got Salford Reds written through me. Yeah, so if you're from Salford, you're never from Manchester. You're Salfordian, and I'm fiercely proud of that. It's tribal, but it's very important. So yeah. I grew up in Salford. And then I've actually not lived in Salford for quite some time now. I moved to university in North Wales, and didn't really go back to Salford then. And then I moved down south for work, which I'm sure we'll get onto in a bit. But yeah, those are my roots. Born, bred, and buttered.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not from Manchester originally, so I've no issues with Salford. So yeah.
All right. Where are you from?
I'm from Southport originally, so just about.
All right, okay. You're a bit posh, yeah.
Well, it's nondescript basically. We all wanted to be houses when we were there. That's how bad it was. So yeah. So in terms of doing that, then, so going to university, that was to do physiotherapy.
No, I did. I got a really circuitous route into physiotherapy. So I did a history degree at Bangor University, and then I did a PhD in the Labour Party, which could make this podcast really short, and everyone could just switch off about now. So yeah, 1951 to 64, 13 years of opposition, the Labour Party, post-Attlee government, Bevan and Gaitskell. Shall we keep going?
So that's what you did for your PhD?
That's what my PhD was on, yeah, 13 years of Labour opposition, yeah. And
so
then
how did you get into doing that then? Like, what was...
I probably didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was growing up. I wanted to obviously be a footballer like every other kid, and that didn't quite happen. And then I just loved sport and ran, but didn't really think of it as a career. And so I just did stuff I enjoyed really, and that was what my parents encouraged. So I did English, history, and art for A level, which doesn't really take you into physiotherapy or anything sciencey. So yeah, I just followed that route and then ended up doing a history degree. And I still love history, and I'm really interested in art and like, well, street poetry really. John Cooper Clarke, another Salford lad who's a hero of mine. So yeah, did the PhD, and got to the point where it was time to, like, a junior lectureship role came up at the university. And I was like, I don't think I can do this for the rest of my life. I remember sitting in archives doing research and just thinking, I need to get out. It was like that was my first experience of lockdown, actually, having to try and do a PhD. But got that done, and then got to that point, and I was like, no, I can't do this. So I, obviously by that point, I was well into my sport. Running was a big part of my life, and through running, I'd come into contact with physios, obviously through injury. And I thought I can be at least as bad as some of these people that I'm seeing. So I might give that a whirl, and applied to the University of Salford. And so got into physiotherapy there. Did that 2003 to 2006 was actually when I did my degree.
Right. So just going back to your PhD then, what can you just give me something? Give me a minute of something that you learned from that.
About the Labour Party or about life in general and trying to get a PhD?
No, the Labour Party specifically. I'm intrigued.
Okay, yeah. So it was I could do more than a minute probably even now. It's a long time ago, but
I'm sure you could, but we'll stick to a minute.
Stick to a minute, yeah. There's a clear time limit on this. So it was post Attlee government, so 1945, after the Second World War, Labour came in, an amazing administration, introduced the NHS, 5th of July 1948, all that sort of stuff. And then they lost that election and sort of ran out of steam and power. And then there was a big battle between the left and right of the party. So you had Bevan and Aaron Bevan on the left, and the Bevanites, and you had Gaitskell on the right. By right, I mean right of the Labour Party, obviously. And Gaitskell wanted to get rid of Clause 4, the commitment to nationalisation, which Blair eventually got rid of. And so, there was a battle for the heart and soul of the party, but there was also this: the world's changed, everyone's got cars and jobs and white goods, and is the Labour Party even relevant anymore? Kind of some of the discussions that are going on now. Is there a working class? Are the Labour Party representative of that? How do they appeal? to that population anymore, because the working class now, oh, these are a working class. No, they've all got good jobs. They've all got decent houses, and it was a very different world. So the Labour Party had to evolve, was the thought process.
Well, my dad was actually a history teacher. My brother got an A-level history. I had to drop it because it was between that and geography. So I'm always really interested about that. So that was post-war, wasn't it? Immediately post-war.
Yeah. Pretty fascinating period. So yeah, there was the PhD kind of actually looked at the intellectuals behind the party and how they drove the policy, or if they drove policy, and then it looked a couple of local studies. So I did a study on Salford, which was staunchly Labour, obviously, and the big rebuilding period, getting rid of slums, but they replaced them with slums. So you had slum housing, they replaced them with all the high rise, which turned into slums. But that was based on, I interviewed people from Salford who were around at the time, and they did it with the best of intentions. It was pretty fascinating. Like you got the best people in the world around town planning who came and said, oh yeah, you build up, you've got green spaces, you do all this, and he said, but they didn't think about things like if you build a high rise, you don't know your neighbours, you don't know the people the floor below or the floor above, and they didn't think about things like if a window breaks on the 16th floor, you have to get a scaffolding up to fix it and how much it costs. He said none of that stuff was thought about until it was too late. But changed the landscape of Salford a bit.
No, definitely. But what do you think about the change in terms of, let's say, Greater Manchester, Salford, all of that? Like the city massively changing now. I know you're not here as much, but like, what's your thoughts on the way it's changed?
Yeah, I come back and don't recognise the place now, to be honest with you. And like Salford Quay is probably the best example, isn't it, of huge regeneration and change. And around the Odsal area, where the Dobermans used to walk around in pairs around there, but it seems to have become gentrified. So that was where all the dockers used to live, wasn't it? It's amazing. I think Manchester is a brilliant city, really vibrant, and so much change, so much investment. And I also, living down south as well now, you also get that north-south divide where you see stuff and people up north, the south don't care about us, and government doesn't care about us, and you can understand why that's very much the case. But the people of Manchester and the stuff that's been done in and around there in Salford, I think it's fantastic with the change that's happening. But house prices are going up quite a lot though.
That is mental. So with our office, I'm looking at the town hall and the library. So they're literally just there now. Then they've got the new buildings at the South Tower, all of those towers that have been built just opposite Deansgate Locks.
Yeah.
And one of my colleagues lives in there. It's just incredible how good these facilities are. It's just it's absolutely amazing. So I'm out in Didsbury, so a little bit out of it. But it's great coming in every day. Like we've been coming in as much as we can do in the lockdown.
Yeah.
But it's good to see the city getting busy again. It's just everywhere's packed. But
really good, yeah. And also the sporting facilities now. Like I know it's sort of post 2002 and Commonwealths, but you also, like, British champs this year are in Manchester, at the sort of in the Eastlands area, and to have the velodrome and the swimming pool, and I think there's a lot to be proud of, isn't there, from that northwest point of view. And the culture and the sport and just people like Manxie doing some amazing stuff. And do you know about Manxie? Have you seen his stuff?
I don't know much about it. I've heard of it. Right. But give us a bit of that.
So Manxie's like the Manchester Banksy, basically, but he does these screen prints and of Manchester, and celebrates Manchester and Manchester culture, and he does a finders keepers thing. So he does these screen prints and he'll tweet about it, he'll put them out around Manchester, and then he tweets like clues so you can go out and get yourself a piece of art.
Right. Well, no, it's quite hard to keep my eye out for that one then. Yeah, no, just finishing up on the Manchester, it is a shame in a way that like both Manchester, but I'm an Everton fan, so I'm kind of impartial. And it would have been good having the City winning both of the tournaments, but anyway.
Would have been nice, yeah. Well, you've just lost Carlo Ancelotti then. You should be in mourning.
I'm quite happy about it. I don't think he was the right fit.
So. Oh, right, okay.
No, he's never managed such a bad team, so it's just, I think it's good time. Although we don't want to go back. David Moyes was amazing, but I think we need something.
Not the answer. Yeah.
A bit fresh.
Nuno's coming in from the ex-Wolves manager. He'd be all right.
Yeah, well, yeah. We've had bad experiences with like Marco Silva and stuff with that, but obviously, we did do a good job. So we'll see. But anyway, that was the biggest sidetrack we've done on any one of these, but I enjoyed it.
Good preamble.
I won't cut it out. So no, yeah, when the Olympics is done, we'll have to. I genuinely am interested in picking your brains on history stuff. So that would be
okay. Sounds good. I'll send you my PhD.
Yeah, well, yeah, all right, yeah. Send me the abbreviated version if you don't mind. So right, so then you start thinking about doing physio. Salford, like was Salford just because of the proximity? I know it's got a big affinity with like, well, the physio program there is really good as well. So is it a combination of both?
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, it was practicalities more than anything else. It was a course that I could do, and so I was married and first kid on the way, but it meant I could stay at my parents' house, so costs were minimal, and also at that time that you didn't have to pay tuition fees, so it was a good course, and that was important, but I couldn't really have done it anywhere else from a cost point of view.
So then, what was it like being a mature student then? How old were you when you were going back to do
that? 31 when I started, I think. Yeah. It was. I mean, I'd been in education for quite a while at that point as well, because my PhD took quite a while. I did little bits of work when I was doing it, so a couple of 6-month projects. So yeah, it just went on forever. I think physio is a very different experience anyway to like when I did history, and the number of hours that you have to put in, and I think you've got people there with a real commitment. They've got a vocation that they really, really passionate about, and you're trying to prepare yourself to go and be a therapist in the outside world. Whereas when lots of the arts degrees, I suppose you've got a bit more time. It's a bit more laid back. So it was more like a job, I suppose. But yeah, I was probably a little bit less interested in the student experience and going out and stuff like that. So, but it was there were quite a few mature students, and there were a few, like Salford's quite good with its mature students and ex sportsmen as well. So we had a couple of guys, like a couple of guys who competed at the highest level in athletics, and then around that time there'd been some ex-pro footballers who were coming through as well. So I think Salford kind of tries to provide that element.
Yeah, it does seem to have a lot of certainly football players that we've come across. A lot
Yeah.
have gone into doing that, which it's a good avenue to go into. So how did you find that then? Was that as soon as you started doing it, did you think actually, yeah, this is the right thing for me to be doing?
Yeah, I absolutely, I literally loved it. From day one. I love the physio. I love the process. I'm really into learning. I love learning. I love being challenged. And even now, I love being in an environment that's reasonably challenging, and where if I try really hard from day one. I've tried really hard to kind of put myself in and around really good people and exposure to the best people, and often that puts you in a position where you're quite exposed, and certainly in the early days where your knowledge is poor, your experience is poor, but trying to access the people that are good. My first experience with British athletics was through Neil Black in 2007. So just qualified, sent a cheeky email. Neil Black was the head of medicine at that point. He was head physio at that point. He hadn't gone to head medicine, and then he became performance director. But I just sent him a cheeky email saying, "Look, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Just qualified. I'm an ex-athlete, or I still run a bit, and I'm passionate about the sport. Can I get a look to see what's going on, basically?" And he said, "Oh, the trials at that point, they were in Manchester again that year." He said, "Come along and you can observe." And I went along and watched, and I was seeing stuff that I had never seen people treat that way before. I'd never seen the way some of those therapists were preparing the bodies for competing, and the techniques they were using, and the sort of the speed of some of the stuff they were doing, and what they were looking at. And I was mesmerized. I was like, so it's always there's always a learning process, and when you've got great thought processes from really good therapists, it's pretty impressive. And at the start, so going back into the study, everything was new. I had to learn like the language, and I didn't have a science background, so the physics and the chemistry and the biology bits I'd done GCSE biology to a very poor level, and mainly it was photosynthesis. It wasn't even bodies, looking at plants. So it was there was a lot to learn in a short space of time, but it was great, and really enjoyed the process. And it's step by step. They said on day one, there's a guy called Stuart Porter there who was pretty good at just sort of saying, okay, the physio degree, think of it as a giant burger, but don't look at the whole thing. Just take a little bite, have a taste, see what you think. It was that sort of, and then just keep taking little bites, little chunks. You'll get there eventually. Don't try and be the finished article straight away. So that helped, and that was how I kind of approached the degree. And then you get sent out doing bits of experience. But honestly, that moment of going to Manchester 2007 and seeing people like Matt Lancaster and James Moore and Mark Young in action, it was different gravy. But literally to the point where you're like, I have never seen this stuff before. I've been on a degree course. I've seen people treat. What is this stuff? And just fascinated to learn more about it and get their thought processes and spend time with those people. And that's the thing that really drives me, because you want to be the best you can be. I mean, I'm under no illusion I'm never going to be the best therapist in the world. There are much better therapists than me. They're smarter and probably got better hands and what have you. But just to be the best you can be, provide the best service you can possibly provide, and try and support the athletes in what they're doing. And if you can do that to the best of your ability, then I think you can sort of be pretty satisfied with what you're doing.
So that experience then, did you get to interact with those physios that you were with?
So that first time, not really. It was just I was making cups of tea and just watching and taking it in. And you can copy what they're doing. You can see it and you can copy it, and you can go away and copy it and try. But unless you understand the why, you're not, because once you really drill into detail, it's like, it's not only the why, it's the order in which you do a treatment. It's the way you do this before that, and how each thing contributes to the next thing. And the technical detail and what they've seen and what they're trying to change and influence, and the amount of influence they want to have, because you don't want to over stimulate a muscle or under stimulate a muscle. Or if one of those early things was, why do muscles get tight, was a question that James Moore asked me really early on. Once I managed to get a bit more time with these, because these people, not only were they brilliant at what they were doing, they were also very open, and very, very much prepared to share their intellectual property and to chat to you and spend time with you. And I probably mentioned James Moore a lot as a mentor and a friend now, and someone who's been really influential in what I've done. But his generosity is incredible with his time and his intellectual property. But yeah, he would challenge you all day long, and he's got the brain the size of a minor emirate. It's just ridiculous. He's off the scale. But yeah, so why do muscles get tight? And I'd have someone to come in and say, I've got a tight calf. Oh, I'll rub it for you then. I'll come back a couple of days later, my calf's tight again. I'll free it out. Yeah, well, you need to understand the why. Why is that muscle getting tight? Because you can keep freeing it out all day long. It'll keep coming back with a tight muscle. So has he got an unstable ankle, or is it because it's weak, or is it because it's protecting the joint or the nerve? And then your thought processes change, and what you do to someone is different. And actually keeping some tone in a muscle would be important. But these guys, they were that level and beyond. And it was fascinating just to see what was happening, and then try and pick their brains. And that happened over a long period of time.
And so that was after you'd graduated.
Yeah.
And so what were you doing then at that time then? Have you have a role anywhere?
Yeah, so when I graduated, I was full-time in the NHS. So I did 8 years in the NHS. It went to part-time, but I did all my rotations. I did like care of the elderly. I did community physio. I did oncology for 6 months. I did women's health physio, and then your orthopedics, neurology, outpatients, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I served a good bit of time in the NHS, and I did a little bit of.
Where were you? Which hospital?
Oh, it was hospital in North Wales. It's called Ysbyty Gwynedd, or Gwynedd Hospital if you're not Welsh. So a big hospital. One of the interesting things there was because North Wales and around that Snowdonia area it's big for sport and rock climbing, and also lots of people go out on bikes around there, motorbikes and push bikes. So there were some pretty big traumas. So the orthopedic department was really, really good dealing with some pretty major crashes and people falling off mountains and things like that. So the skill sets at different places develop around, I suppose, the geography of the place. So that was quite interesting. So yeah, spent 8 years there. I did a little bit of work in locally with the football teams, a little bit with Bangor City, a little bit with Portmaddock, and then I did island game stuff because Anglesey is part of the island games, so multi-sport event, which was really good. And then I worked a little bit in private practice, still doing bits with track and field and athletics, and then I dropped. I went to part-time and started working at Athlete Matters in Worsley. And then, so I was doing one day Athlete Matters and one day in Loughborough, working as an endurance therapist there when they had a part-time role. I was driving around the country basically, just from North Wales to Manchester to Loughborough and back each week. But you just getting the experience, just spending time with people and trying to learn the job.
So did you build that link with Duncan Mason when you were at Salford then, or is that just something which you targeted, or how did you get the role with him?
Yeah, I already knew Duncan actually from running. So he was a Salford Harrier, and I was a Sale Harrier. Salford Harriers I was a track runner really, and Salford Harriers didn't really have a track club, or didn't have people who did much on the track. They were road and cross country and very good at it. So yeah, I knew Duncan from that, and then I was at the university and he was a lecturer there, and so when I finished, he was like, "Oh, if you want to do a bit of work in my clinic, come along." So I took him up on that offer and spent a few years there. And there were a couple of really good therapists there, actually, people who are now. So Chris Brammer, who's just done a PhD, a very good therapist who's based at MIP and still at Salford University, and then Alex O'Gorman, who's working for Ineos, was there, and there's another physio called Kat who was working in women's football. She was at Liverpool and then Man United, and yeah, just a nice bunch of people and some good stuff going on. So that was a reasonable exposure to people with more experience at that point and doing a bit of learning, and then the athletics just got bigger and bigger. And then I got a job with the British Olympic Association at the intensive rehab unit, and so that was very much, we talked about James before, but James was the manager there, and because of the stuff I'd done with British athletics, he rang me one day and said, "Oh, this job's coming up at the IRU," and I thought, I don't want to work for Irish rugby. Didn't even know what it was at the time, and yeah, so he said, "Look, if you apply for it, I'd be interested in interviewing you. That's as far as this offer goes. This is just about, there are certain people I want to kind of see and explore and chat to. You'd be on that list. It's a long list." So yeah, so I applied for that. And I wouldn't, to be honest, if it wasn't for the connection, I probably wouldn't have got an interview. It was pretty much a wild card that they selected me for that. Went for the interview. We did a practical assessment. Did an interview. Was successful in getting that job. And so yeah, moved then down south to Bisham Abbey and spent 4.5 years there, pre Rio. So we worked through that Olympic cycle. Really tremendous place to learn. Like the bit for me there was, not only did I have access to James, and so a huge learning curve and getting absolutely hammered most days on what I was doing and why. But then I spent every day with an S&C coach who was full time and a physiologist who was full time. We shared an office, so I had to speak to the S&C coach about sort of what we were seeing from a musculoskeletal point of view and how we might put interventions in place and what those interventions might look like and what the adaptations that we're looking for. And so I had to have an understanding of S&C. So it really upskilled me on A, the conversations, and B, what that sort of meant. And the same with physiology. Probably helped my coaching. I coach quite a number of athletes, and that time spent with the physiologist, lady called Rebecca Toon, who was there, like, really helped. And we did lots of really good work together. Again, like, talk about some of the great people that I've seen work. None of us were top of our game. None of us were the best at what we do, but we worked brilliantly together, and there was a real passion in the place from the nutritionist, from the sports psych, from the doc. Real good bunch of people. Nick Chad, who's at Manchester City. You know Nick, don't you? He was there when I first started, and then got a head of science and medicine at the academy at City. So just some really good people who were great to collaborate with, and I think we did some really nice work, and potentially saved a few careers in that place as well, and people who went on to Rio. I think we had like 16 medalists who came through in that 4 years. We probably had about 40 athletes who'd gone through the intensive rehab unit who went to Rio, but 16 people who went and won medals there.
Yeah.
So,
how does that differ to, like, in your traditional setting, clinical setting, and the IRU different under the treatments you have to deal with?
Yeah, the IRU is so bespoke. You know, you've got 3 athletes each week, maximum of 3 athletes, and you could drill into huge details. So, and often it was people who were they'd sort of, either it was recalcitrant injury or a big injury that sports were dealing with and struggling to deal with. Equally, sometimes it was a babysitting service because everyone was going away on a camp and they had an injured athlete back home and they needed someone just to look after them. So it was a mix. But yeah, we had some really big long-term injuries where they needed that specialist care and attention. And as a business model, the IRU doesn't work. So it's brilliant that the BOA and the EIS actually collaborated on this and put it together, because to have that many staff and so few athletes each week, you know the costs were ridiculous in some ways, but the level of service and what we provided, I think, was first class. It was really good. So yeah, completely different. It's a very protected environment as well. That was the other difference. Whereas now, when you work in, you've got coaches and athletes all the time around, and there's a much bigger demand. Often you come into the IRU and it's like, well, you're here because you're not in the best shape, and you're not going to be for a little bit of time. So there's more often than not, there wasn't the time pressure that there is in your normal clinical work around getting people back. Obviously, there was as you got closer to the Olympics. It got very time precious. But generally, it was just an opportunity to spend massive amounts of time in the detail.
And then from that, so what was it like when you kind of see them for an intense period, and then you pass them back to wherever they're based, is it?
Yeah. I guess there were, much as it was brilliant, that was probably one of the big frustrations as well. You'd spend this like fraction of time with somebody, or you'd start a process and then they'd go back, and I've seen it from both sides now as well. So, an athlete can come back into British athletics, and we've got a huge number of athletes we're trying to look after, and everyone's really busy. And with the best will in the world, you don't have the time. You literally don't have the time to spend. Right, I can spend all morning with one athlete. No, I can't, because I've got another 10 athletes knocking on my door. So very much the beauty of that place was the time that you could spend with people. And I think the athletes really appreciate that as well. And there was a big focus there as well from the sports psych. Sarah Cecil and Chris Bodmin were the psychs that I worked with when I was there, but they were central to the process. We tried to tee up the sports injury psychology of injury element early in the week, and they were sports injury specialists, and it was about like the threat of injury, but it was also understanding the athlete, and they'd really help us with how we talk to the athlete, what the messages that we give to them, what the threats are for that individual athlete and how they may respond. And so we were kind of unified in that approach as well. And that was very, very new to me, and not something that I've seen anywhere else either. The sports psych involvement with athletes, and there were conversations and stuff, but it was such a close-knit group, and that element was really, really good and really helpful.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so when you see these athletes that go to Rio 2016, like what's that like when you're watching them perform and so on?
Oh yeah, it was brilliant. There's a couple of well documented ones that have been through there. So probably Becky James would be one that would. Yeah, so this isn't breaching confidentiality, because there was a documentary on her and stuff like that. And so she turned up with an injury in British cycling, and obviously been struggling now. In order for British cycling to send somebody down to us, they've got to be like struggling, because we haven't got a velodrome as a starting point, so they can't get on the bike and do what they would normally do. So she came down with this injury, and we worked really closely with British Cycling and Phil Burt, who was there at the time. So when Becky actually got back on the bike, he came down to do the bike fit, and like the intimate knowledge of that was unbelievable. The millimeters and how it should look, and the technology around it was pretty fascinating in itself. But yeah, so she came down, and we eventually got her back on the bike and back fit, obviously ready to go and compete and go back to British Cycling in a good place. And then she went and won 2 silver medals in Rio, and like watching her do that was sensational. And she was also such a lovely, humble person. She invited us to the celebration when she got home, and and was grateful and said thank you, which is all. You don't want any more than that. It was a pleasure to work with her and stuff. So absolutely phenomenal experience. These guys, the people that came in there, Andy, were like special people. Most of the time, they're just like 99% of the time, incredible people, incredibly driven, like passionate about what they did, wanting to do absolutely everything they could possibly do to be the best they could be, because they're going into an environment where that's second isn't an option. You're working with those people all the time. You didn't have to encourage them to do something. It was like, normally it was like, what else can I do? Is there more? Is there anything else? What else can I do? Is there more? Brilliant people.
Is that pretty consistent with the people that come through in general, or is that the people at that particular time, or is that the mindset that you tend to see with the athletes you work with?
Yeah, in not even just in the elite environment. I think just most of the athletes that I see, some of the, even your good club runners and stuff, if you tell them they need to do X, Y, and Z to get better, they do it. It's so unusual not to have that now. Like in the NHS, I remember having to like cajole and encourage and please can you just do an X? Please can you do this? Please can if you want to get better, you've got to help yourself in this way, and this is the best advice that I can give you on this. And there was often a reluctance to do it. People just wanted to just fix me. But yeah, there's the athlete population sensational in their approach and what they're prepared to do. But the endurance world that I've been in quite a lot, like those guys, you would not believe the amount of work that these guys do, and it's not just for a short period of time. In order to build your aerobic capacity, build that engine, and be a great endurance athlete, you're looking at years and years of real dedication and commitment. It's impressive. It's impressive what you see.
Yeah. So once you'd finished there, then, did you leave after Rio from there?
Yeah, I left after Rio. I went to British Athletics. 2018, I went to British Athletics actually. So I was there for a bit of time after Rio. But I got the endurance role with British Athletics. So I've worked. So until sort of end of last year, when I kind of got a bit more of a lead role at British Athletics, I was sort of leading on endurance, and that's I'd worked in endurance obviously before I got the full-time role, but because the endurance program, the beauty of the endurance program in some ways as a therapist is you get to travel to some great places because of the altitude and the commitment to altitude. So there was Ian Stewart was in charge at the time, and there was a thought process around why are the East Africans so damn good? What is it that they've got that we haven't got? Why are they annihilating everybody? And one of the things, they're born at altitude, live at altitude. All right, then let's match it. So obviously there are altitude tents, but there was a big program then to get out to Kenya, and lots of work done to build places for British athletes to stay, and a big commitment to that. So we went to Kenya. I've been to Ethiopia to altitude, Font Remo, San Moritz, and Flagstaff. So you get to go to these amazing places. One of for the scientists amongst this, anyone who's listening to this, one of the funny things, I went to Font Remo, and Font Remo's like 1,800 meters. First time I got there, and Barry Fudge arrived with a load of generators, and I was like, "What are those for?" He goes, "They're altitude tents." I'm like, "We're at altitude." He's like, "Yeah, it's 1,800 meters, and 2,400 is what they're sleeping at." So they're all at altitude, sleeping in altitude tents. I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And suddenly realised there's a bit of thought gone into this. The science is there, and people are doing the jobs, and yeah, it's Interesting world. But yeah, you get to see some great places and spend time. You spend a lot of time with the athletes. Then that's when you helps with building relationships, understanding what they're doing. You support track sessions and work pretty closely with the coaches and the physiology staff and the S&C people when they come out as well. So great environment to work in.
Yeah, what's it like? Because again, we work with a lot of sports teams where there's a number of different athletes. When you're working with some very high profile, just individual athletes, how does that get intense when you're with them for such long periods?
Not so much. I think the intensity bit is normally in the holding camp pre-major games. It's like, and actually from now, if we go where we are now and going into Tokyo, we're at the point now where if someone breaks down, if we get even a low level soft tissue injury, trying to turn that around in time for trials, which is at the end of June, is a huge task. And anything more significant, and you're probably out of trials. And then if you're out of trials, you're on a wing and a prayer to see if you can sneak in the back door with the one selection slot that may be available. So it's squeaky bum time in the world of track and field and in lots of other sports at the moment. And I think that's where it gets intense, and that's where being calm and making good decisions at the moment is really, really important, because people can get very twitchy. And if you've got a twitchy coach, twitchy athlete, and a twitchy therapist, that's a pretty twitchy situation. So yeah, trying to make good decisions and make sure that you're doing things right in the right way, and not making poor decisions. Good athletes make good decisions, and that's where we're at the moment.
Yeah. And how's it been in the lead up to it? Don't want to dwell too much on COVID, because I know it's been a lot, but like, how's it been?
Yeah, COVID is like, the world's opening up again now, isn't it, as far as competition is concerned, and that's absolutely brilliant. So I seem to spend my life in Poland at the moment, because Poland seems to be the only place that's hosting athletics. So we've had world relays, we had team champs last weekend. We did indoors there. I did a half marathon there just a few months ago as well. So it's great, and there's more and more competitions, and locally as well that's happening. But the logistics of it for us are a nightmare. So coming back and having to isolate, or how we get out there. Even we had a camp in Flagstaff a few weeks. Well, it finished a couple of weeks ago, and we had to get permission from the US Olympic Committee. They had to give us a permission to say this is an elite exemption. This is why these people are coming into the country. And I know there's a global pandemic, and so I'm aware of the significance of that, and not trying to belittle it at all. And we're traveling around and still doing stuff, so it's very privileged in that sense. But it has been incredibly challenging, because you come back, you isolate. Everyone, when we went to indoors in Poland, quite a few members of the team came back with COVID. So we all had to do tests to get there, tests while we were there. Everything was fine. Then we came back and a couple of people started getting symptoms. So everyone then had to isolate. So the whole team and all the therapy staff. So we were pretty thin on the ground for a while after that, because no one could go into work. Like the logistics of travel and supporting athletes, and because we try, and it isn't a normal environment where everyone's under one roof or everyone's in the same place. So you just go into the football team and everyone's at the training venue. We've got athletes who normally are based out of the country, and we would tend to drop support into them. So into France, into Italy, we've got people in America, people in the West Indies, we've got people all over the place, and then even just in this country, we've got people in Glasgow, in Brighton, in Manchester, and the MPI for British Athletics is Loughborough. So how we then try and support key athletes in wherever it is that they are, or wherever they are in the world, has become much more of a challenge with COVID.
Yeah, and I saw this morning, actually, there's an article from one of I think it was a president from the Tokyo game, said it was 100% on. So that's obviously good. So what's like your timelines now? Like when do you have to get prepared to move over there?
So we've got trials 25th, 26th, 27th of June, and then selection on 28th. And then there's a very short window after that, I think, for a couple of other people to potentially get in. And then most of the team will have their kitting out, which is a pretty special experience for people that the BOA put on. I think that's also the end of June. From then, we've got, from an endurance point of view, we've got people looking to go up to altitude or to heat. So we've kind of got people in Font-Romeu, San Moritz, and Mallorca. So we're trying to work out if we can do any travel to support that, because normally we obviously would, and there would have been a camp in San Moritz. And then we're going to Yokohama, and we'll be in Yokohama. For everyone's going to have to go in a little bit earlier. People would often just drop in late, but they can't do that anymore. And again, this is around COVID, and so if anyone were to come into contact with somebody with COVID on the travel, and Track and Trace got them from that point of view, they'd have to isolate. So if you get in late and you've got a 10-day isolation period, and you've only arrived 3 days before your race, your Olympics is done, because you're having to isolate. So people are having to go in at least 11 days before their event to Yokohama, which is the holding camp, and then from Yokohama into Tokyo. So athletics starts, it's the second week, isn't it, of the Olympics always? So we're the 30th of July we start, and then into that early August period. And day one is Moyes 10K in the evening, and we've got women's 800 and we've got women's 100 on day one. So it starts with a bang for athletics, really. We've got some big stuff going on.
Oh, Mo Farah's doing, I thought he was doing I thought he'd moved to the marathon now. What is he?
Yeah, no, he did move to the marathon, and then he's abandoned the marathon for this year. So he's got, actually on Saturday in Birmingham, we've got the 10K Olympic trial and European Cup. So I'm off to Birmingham Friday for that. I've done all my PCR tests, and then that's the other thing you have to do. You get to the hotel, you do a PCR test, and you have to wait in your room. You have to isolate until they've got the results, and then you can come out again. Everywhere we go, it's like someone shoves something like behind the back of your eyeball, I think it is. I think that's what they're aiming for. And then you go and sit in your room for a couple of hours, and then they go, all right, you've not got it, you can come out. So yeah, that's Saturday. There's the trials for the 10K at Birmingham. Do you know the night of the 10K that's been the last few years in London, that got cancelled? So again, the problem of trying to find a new venue, where can we hold something, and quite a few it's a Europa Cup thing as well. So that's quite a big thing on Saturday night in Birmingham. If anyone, I'm sure it'll be live streamed. I'm not sure about spectators. I think there might be a few.
Yeah, how do you think that'll be then? Just like, because it's been so weird, like even watching the England match last night, it's just, you got a few fans in, they're not pumping the sound in. Like, what do you think the experience is going to be like?
Yeah, it's I think the athletes have relatively got used to an empty stadium, but they don't like it. I spoke to a few people I've spoke to people in football as well, and they're like, it's rubbish. The empty stadium is rubbish, and everyone wants the fans back. I went to Gateshead for the Diamond League, and there were a few fans in there, but obviously spread out, and it's good that there are people there, but yeah, it's still a bit subdued and feels a bit weird. I actually went to Salford Wigan as well on the way to Gateshead. Managed to get that, and went with my dad to watch Salford play. And they had like bubbles. The way that everyone's doing it is you have your bubble. So they try and encourage as many people. I think, say you're all one family, 15 blokes from. Yeah, but you say you're all in the same family anyway, and then you get 15 tickets together, and they leave 2 seats either side of you, and then the next, because they don't want individuals, because you get one person, and then they take 5 seats because you've got 2 either side of them, I suppose.
Right.
But hey, it was weird. It's a really odd atmosphere, and everyone spread out, and you turn to the bloke next to you and have to shout at them, But they don't know what it's going to be like in Tokyo at the moment. There's talk of there being, obviously people can't travel in, but there is talk of locals being allowed in to watch. And I think everyone really hopes that is the case, and some atmosphere, and it feels a little bit more special and grand, as opposed to a vast empty stadium. And just
well, it's good it's on. It's good that it's been so amazing. The last 2 Olympics have just been absolutely incredible. So hopefully it gives us something that's exciting to watch anyway.
Yeah, I think it's hugely important that it's on. I think it makes a big difference to everybody who's got big targets and aiming for it. And some people obviously missed out last year, and some people will benefit from the extra year. So it'll be interesting to see. And like obviously the backroom staff have invested huge amounts into this, and you know, you travel and you're away, and it's hard sometimes and all that, and you do it because you want to see people successful. And obviously for me, going to the Olympics this time to see any of the guys get medals would be really, really special, and that's what it's all about. And it's potentially life-changing for them as well if they can do that. So you really hope that if that is the case, they're doing it in front of a crowd.
Yeah. And how much has the Diamond League changed things in terms of like the commercial aspect of it? Has that been a positive influence then for the athletes?
I think it's been nice for them if they can get into it and do well in it, to earn some money, because there isn't a huge amount of money sloshing around in athletics. So, you know, it's great that they can do that. I think from a purist point of view, the problem with the Diamond League is it's always, well, so I'm going into endurance again now, but it's paced. So they're just time trials, and I think I personally I'd like to see a few more races, but everyone's just obsessed with what time is it they run, and you just get a procession of guys running round, and normally a few East Africans at the front, and then a few Europeans desperately trying to hang on to the coattails. And I don't know, it's they're good events, and there's some obviously some brilliant racing, but as far as time trials concerned, but I'd like to see more races.
Yeah,
but yeah, Diamond League is a great thing, but I also think you know if you look at the number of fans coming through the doors when they could anyway, I thought it's starting to dwindle a little bit, and I think generally athletics is struggling to find its market, and it used to when I grew up, you know, they'd stop the 9 o'clock news to show Ovet or Co trying to break a world record in somewhere like Rieti or something like that, you know. Household names, everyone knew who Linford Christie was, and Fatima Whitbread, and Co, Ovet and Cram, and those guys, everybody knew who they were. And now we've got equally good athletes, but they're not household names, that's for sure. They're not particularly well known, and there's a lot of work to do, I think, to get athletics back onto the telly.
Yeah. So in terms of for you then going forward, what are your ambitions like? Any other things? Like, it sounds like you've got like kind of dream job for you from your background and like working with the sort of people that you are doing.
Very much so. As far as like, I was a member of SAIL when I was 9, and so I've pretty much run all my life, and absolutely love athletics. So it's pretty much a dream to get this role, and I'm enjoying that process. Going to the Olympics is a massive thing for me. I've done a Commonwealth, I've done a few Worlds, I've done Europeans and all that sort of stuff, but again, from a really young age, I wanted to go to the Olympics as an athlete, and that was my ambition, and I was miles away from doing that. I tried, but I was miles off. So to have the opportunity to go that is really, really special for me. And the first Olympics I remember was '84 in Los Angeles. I was on holiday in the Lake District in a caravan with my mum and dad and my sister, and it poured down for a week. So we just went on to LA time and watched all the track and field. So yeah, the Olympics are incredibly special, and that's something I'm very much looking forward to. Ambition wise, I guess it's more just about, I just want to be as good as I can be, and keep working with great people and keep being challenged, and learning from the best. You know, that's and then also hopefully even getting to the point where, you know, where I've sat and talked to you about spending time with the James Moores of this world, and how generous those people have been and open. And, you know, in 10 years' time, you'll get people saying, well, Andy Walling was decent enough to spend some time with me and share his experience and share the limited knowledge that he had. So yeah, that'd do for me.
Yeah, no, well, that sounds good. Well, if no one does that, I'll listen to your history. No problem. So
You'll be able to find, I'm sure we'll be able to find someone, or I'll pay someone to say it or something.
No, I'm sure there will be. No, I really appreciate you squeezing me in for this. I know you're absolutely slammed at the moment. So massive good luck. Really enjoy all of the build up and then the actual games itself. And it'd be great to catch up when it's all done.
Cheers, Andy. Thanks for inviting me, and you know, the support that your company has given us, and at British Athletics as well, and knowing we've got you and your team, you know, it's really good and really helpful. And we also know when we've, any of the equipment, if we've got problems or we need any help, we've got someone where we can call. So yeah, it's been great. And I know this isn't an advert and you haven't asked for any of this, but we've recently got the tools in there, haven't we, from the hawk grips that you do and the shockwave that we've just got in. So British Athletics are in your debt, and we are very grateful, and that stuff hopefully will contribute to the therapy provision and help make a difference with the athletes that we try and support. So thanks very much.
No, well, yeah, I didn't ask you to say that, but it was perfectly said. Perfectly said. No, it's great. We love working with it. Dom and Casey love coming in and working with the team there. So it was great for us to be part of it. We're a much smaller part than you are, but it's great to be involved with it. So no, thank you for saying it.
Yeah, cool.
Great. All right. No, have a great morning, and
thanks very much.
See you soon.
Cheers, Andy. See you soon.
Thanks. Great, that mate.